Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Diving Festival event, Redefining Inclusion, Building Future Workplaces for Neurodivergent Talent. As a strong advocate of this event, I am proud to see us come together to recognise the immense value that neurodivergent individuals bring to our workplace. Their unique perspective and talents are not only valuable, they are vital for fostering innovation and growth. Our goal today is simple but powerful: to create a workplace where every individual, regardless of how they think or process information, feels empowered and supported. By embracing neurodivergency, we are not only building a more inclusive culture, but also unlocking greater potential for creativity, problem solving, and collaboration. Let's use this event to challenge our outdated ideas and remove barriers and pave the way for a truly inclusive future where innovative talent thrives. Thank you for being here, and I hope today inspires you to continue championing inclusion in your own workspace. Enjoy the event.
It is with great pleasure to introduce and welcome our first speaker for today, Merlee Cruz Jayme. Merlee is a 2024 Campaign Women Leading Change, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Champion. She is the chair mom and the founder of the Misfits Camp, the first ever safe space in the world to train the neurodivergent with creative talent and help them pursue creative careers in the industry. Before this, she held the esteemed positions of Chief Creative Officer in Asia Pacific for Dentsu and Global President for Dentsu McGarry-Bowen Worldwide. The 2019 Drum Global Ranking announced the top 100 chief creative officers in the world, and she was one of the 8 women on the list. As Dentsu Jaime Saifu and Dentsu One Manila's chair mom, she won the only Cannes Lion Grand Prix for the Philippines and other major awards worldwide. She is one of CNN's leading women, an author of 4 creative books, a mom to 4 creative women, and an inspiration in breaking the glass ceiling in this mad men's world. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, Merlee Cruz Jayme.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Aon, for inviting me to this. I'm very honored to be part of your Dive In Festival. Okay. Right, there you go. So, all about me. I've been working in advertising for 34 years. Guess my age now. So, I've been a founder of an ad agency, and then I was able to, it was acquired by Japan, the 4th largest network in the world, which is called Dentsu. And also, after that, I put up a training center called the Misfits Camp. And I've been a creative for so long that I've trained and mentored so many creative brains that I was curious because I had a nephew who was diagnosed with autism, and I saw him design games, and he's only 14. And when I was with Dentsu, I would spend months in the Ginza office of Dentsu, and we had a floor of Japanese technicians, specialists on games, young ones. But they actually match my nephew, who's 14, diagnosed with autism, with the same talent. That's where I got to think, maybe we are untapped. These are untapped brains for our future now that we're being threatened by AI. So that's the start. So my purpose from being in an ad agency moved now to being the mom. I call myself chair mom to the neurodivergent. Okay? And then these are the talk points today. One is understanding neurodivergent, benefits, and the overcoming challenges. There are so many questions on, let's say, companies who would want to hire them later on. So let's dive in. So let's start with neurodiversity. You know, the word neurodiversity is a bit big, but it just means simply neuro is brain, diversity means different. Okay. Now, this is a brain picture here, and I'm not making this up because look at the names. A part of it is hippocampus. Hippocampus stores our memory. It's like, remember Harry Potter's pensieve of Dumbledore? That's hippocampus. All of us here have that. Every single memory is stored in the hippocampus. Then you have amygdala. Amygdala processes our emotions, whether you're happy, you're sad, you're excited. Thalamus is all about senses. I don't know why hearing is not part of it, but seeing, smelling, tasting is all part of that. Hypothalamus, however, works with our hormones. So it tells the body, sends signals to the body, whether you're thirsty, you're hungry, you're sleepy. Okay, so all of these parts, if you would imagine amygdala, for example, is sensitive and it's more, active. You can imagine someone when with mental health problems on depression, bit a little bit more of something or a little bit less of something. Or thalamus, for example, sensory overload. Some of the neurodivergent have that. So you can imagine all of us are wired differently. So that's where neurodiversity is. It's a range of differences in each and everyone's brain, the way our brains function and behaves. So we have to understand so that we recognize all of these signals, and then you know how to accommodate and to adapt to it and accept it. Next would be this wonderful chart. Okay. When I first saw this chart, I was really impressed. So there's a lot of disorders here. You have dyslexia, which is the difficulty of reading and spelling, ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. You have this pattern of impulsivity, inattention, hyperactivity. Tourette syndrome, your nerve gives you some tics. Acquired neurodivergent, if let's say you have a trauma or you met an accident, somehow it changes the way your brain functions. Learning disability is a little bit of delay in or slowness of learning. Mental health deals with your emotions and moods. That's why the depression, for example, bipolar syndrome is here. Autism is simply a developmental disorder, how your brain is wired. Dyspraxia is about balance and coordination of your body. Dyscalculia is difficulty or the disorder for figures and numbers. Now, there's a lot of disorders there, but there's a lot of discoveries as well. Dyslexia, for example, because you cannot read and having a hard time spelling, your visual thinking or your visualization is very strong. ADHD, for example, ADHD, for example, is you get to hyper focus and the energy is it's tremendous. Tourette syndrome, because you cannot control your tics, you're very much into observing. Observational skills are very strong. Acquired neurodivergent is you have empathy. Learning disability, you are consistent, trying very hard to learn and cope. Mental health, you have depth of thinking. These are deep thinkers. Autism, for example, you have very good memory, which I don't have. Very good and concentration and details, eye for details. Dyspraxia, you cannot balance. Therefore, you have empathy, very strong in intuition. Dyscalculia, you have a disorder for numbers. So your verbal skills are heightened. If you look at all of that, there's a lot of discoveries and advantages more than, just focus on disorders and disabilities. So here, all of this encircled here would be creativity, authenticity, hyper-focus, innovation, innovative thinking, let's say resilience and honesty and verbal. All of these are positives. So these discoveries are actual strengths. You may not call it superpowers, but they're strengths and they're possibilities. Now, let's move on. Dispelling some misconceptions, okay? First one would be they lack intelligence and skills. And then the second one would be disorders require treatment. The third, they cannot understand instructions. Fourth, they're incapable of solving problems and ideation. These are myths. Now let's manage that one by one. The first one, don't overlook their strengths. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of strengths, skills, talent, and capabilities. So look at the abilities more than disabilities. Second one would be the disorders may require treatment, but they thrive with the right focus, support, and accommodations. They may not understand instructions, but the right way to communicate is the key to communicating to them. I remember we had some deaf neurodivergent, and I know it's very hard to communicate, but I found my iPhone. I haven't memorized the ASL or the FSL, sign language. So I had my phone and I have live captions on my phone. When I talk, it comes out. So we were communicating that way. So you can actually come up with ways of communicating. I remember also we have someone heightened autism. She is nonverbal, but I asked the father, how can she, let's say, follow directions? The father goes, text her. And I've been texting with her. We're text mates. So they do have different ways of communication, but you can communicate. They are incapable of solving problems and ideation. This is one thing I've proven, definitely a myth. So every Friday, we have Inspiring Friday where I push briefs to them about brands or problems, and they solve it one by one. So they could. They could. And there, they have surprising ways in. Now, let's move to benefits of neurodiversity. I'd really love to show you some examples because this is my everyday. So enhance attention to detail. If it's really remarkable the way they focus and their eye for details. Okay, this boy, Jayme, memorized all the Avengers of Marvel, and then he combined it into one. So this picture, if you really look at it, all the Marvel superheroes rolled into one. So he likes combining. That's how detailed he is. So I tested him. You know Star Wars, right? Yep. Combine it into one. And then what I didn't put here is I challenged him again. Villains of Disney. He came up and he has a talent to combine. So I'm finding ways now of what brands or products he can combine, you know? So experimentation. Very good at that. Strong analytical and problem solving skill. As I've said, one Inspiring Friday, our challenge to them was, what if your shoes will save you from a bad guy when you go home at night? Make it into your defense weapon. Kevin designed a shoe where there is an alarm system. Stamp on it and there's an alarm. That's one. Second, it has GPS. It's connected to your phone, so your mom, exactly knows where you are. I mean, this is how these people think. Okay, so again, they know how to solve problems. Number three, persistent and work ethic. This girl is Erin, and I bent my rules because I only accept 20, 21 and above in the camp. This girl is 19. She has already won an award in Tokyo for her visual paintings. Now, of course, at the Misfits camp, we tried to improve it to make her more hireable. Okay, so what we did was we taught her from her acrylic to digital paintings. So she's now into digital. So persistent focus. I just taught her Procreate. What, 10 minutes? Done. They know it already. Unique creative perspectives. This is Peter. So I asked him, when he came, he was just drawing with a piece of paper and pencil. Today, I asked him to draw some of my brands that I work on. And then he started like animating. Animating on that. I don't know if it animates, but this should be animating. But everything was like having little faces and smiles and everything. I mean, that's a very unique perspective. Nutrition wants to buy it as their GIFs for their communication, okay? Next is strong technical skills. So this one would be the pet-o-meter. Again, on a Friday, I asked them if they could possibly invent an app for pets. This is a pet app to count the steps. So once you walk your pets, it counts the steps so you know if it's healthy or not. So pet-o-meter. So these are all, even the names are from them, okay? Honesty and integrity. This is one of our deaf. See, I was holding a phone that's live captions. So one father told me, Merlee, my son, he's 28, e.g., he has no idea or concept of evil. I really felt like I have a big responsibility in my hands. They're so innocent. There's a lot of toxicity in advertising where I come from. The words we use when we're, stressed out because of deadlines. These people, you can't do that. It taught me kindness of words. It taught me being generous. It taught me honesty. So being around the divergent somehow teaches you these values once again. Systematic approaches to tasks. Justin, he is ADHD. He has ADHD. And we taught him the eat the frog uh, organizing workflow. He designed his own and he called it Tasty Frog. This is going to eat the frog, Tasty Frog. And in this, he created his own workflow that would help his ADHD. This is now a total 5-pager. This was just the first 3 sets when he showed it first to me. Amazing. Exceptional memory skills. Well, I won't show you the film anymore because it's in Filipino, but when you have a time, watch it. It's one of the moms of her son is with helped by Project Inclusion to get a job in South Star. But before that, he talked about the exceptional memory skills of Ian. He memorized all the tax identification numbers of her mom's clients because the mom is an accountant. So her mom would just say the name of the client. He knows the TIN. So this is like amazing, okay? Amazing memory. Then you have the passion-driven engagement. For example, Cheska here, she is a graphic designer. We taught her how to be a graphic designer. She would also draw Star Wars, anime. All of them love anime and Star Wars and Marvel. But now she draws storyboards and she draws social media content. And then we were all invited and sponsored by Spikes Asia. Is a festival of creativity in Singapore. She was sponsored. Can you play the clip? Because she was making a speech. That's supposed to be a video. Hopefully there's audio. Oh my gosh, there's no audio. Well, she's making a speech about asking the whole creative industry to actually be accepted for being different. And there was no dry eyes in that room when she was making that short speech. Okay. The next one is the ability to work independently. I have one divergent, Kel. His pictures, his photography is super wonderful. If you look at it, there were ants fighting. I mean, super detailed. And he can work all alone. And then the diverse perspective on inclusion, they could design their own journal for ADHD Daily. And I'm not sure. I don't think you have audio, but I do have some videos. Try again if there's audio. If there's none, I can move on. Maybe I just move on. Okay. Overcoming challenges would be lack of understanding and awareness. So all you need to do is you really have to have the education part of each and every disorder. You have to have structural changes. You know, you have to have accommodations in the work hours is an example. Cultural and social barriers would be the bias and the bullying and discrimination before you put them into a workplace. This has to, once you have the education part, that has to go. They have to be understood well. Inadequate training and support, that would be the lack of training. Of course, that would be put in place. And I've said communication challenges would be you don't find out what is the best way to communicate with them. And then how to overcome would be this. We have training programs, put them in place. The one that is neurotypical and the neurodivergent together. Clear communication protocols. Once you figured out how to communicate, put them in place. And then caring for work environment. Sometimes they're remote, but believe me, the neurodivergent, they want to come to work every day. They want to see people. They want to talk to people because probably when they were growing up, they were kept in the rooms. Okay. Personalized accommodation. Each one has a different level of disorder. You cannot have one and the same. So if we have curriculums for 30 adults, 30 each. So one curriculum for each. Mentorship would be very, very helpful, and support groups, so that it's always evaluated how they feel. It's very important. Promoting a culture of acceptance is also a good one. Encourage dialogue. And then regular assessment and adjustments. And to leave you with this thought, increase diversity, enhance creativity and productivity, and therefore you give a positive company responsibility. So everybody, again, has a culture of kindness, which somehow at the workplace disappears right away.
Thank you again, Merlee, for sharing with us more information on what neurodivergence is and how it redefines inclusion to a sustainable workforce. At this point, we have gathered a remarkable set of professionals to discuss neurodiversity in more detail and share different viewpoints and experiences from their specialized industries. Please join me in welcoming our esteemed panelists. First up, Francesca Nobleza, also known as Frankie, is an IT project manager and a passionate advocate for disability inclusion and web accessibility. With expertise in communication and strategic project coordination, she has experience in leading teams to achieve project goals.
Frankie is dedicated to creating inclusive workspaces
That embrace diversity and empower individuals.
all abilities. Her commitment to breaking down barriers and fostering collaboration drives her advocacy efforts, ensuring equal access and opportunities for everyone in the workplace. Next up, Ed Harris. Ed is a
Created champion for diversity, equity, and inclusion with 18 years of experience in various industries. He is committed to empowering neurodivergent individuals and underrepresented groups by actively
advocating for inclusive workplace practices and supportive accommodations. Ed's leadership in diversity, equity, and inclusion originates from his belief that embracing neurodiversity leads to stronger, more innovative teams. Throughout his career, he has helped to design policies that promote diversity and create workplaces where everyone feels valued and empowered. His effort has had a transformative influence, promoting a culture of acceptance and inclusion. And last but not the least, Grant Javier, supports of disability inclusion in the workplace. Grant serves as Executive Director of Project Inclusion Network, or PIN. Grant has played a significant role in fostering an inclusive workplace culture throughout the Philippines with a goal of providing fair opportunities for persons with disabilities. He aimed to enable companies to see the benefits of having a diverse workforce by tearing down obstacles for neurodivergent people. With the establishment of the Philippine Business and Disability Network, or PBDN, which brings together more than 50 businesses in support of disability inclusion, PIN has formed alliances with the group sector and broadened its influence during his direction. Grant's advocacy for a more inclusive and equitable world for everyone is driven by his personal experience as the parent of a son with autism. And to moderate today's discussion, we have Chris Rosenthal. Chris leads Aon Philippines Health Solutions Strategic Advisory and Consulting Team. She enables clients by understanding their evolving needs, driving innovation and transformation, and helping clients have a more holistic and strategic view of their people programs. Prior to Aon, Chris spent over 25 years of her professional experience in the HR space from various industries such as manufacturing, financial services, biotechnology, telecommunications, and as an HR executive for 14 years from an IT BPM multinational organization. We're very excited for the conversation ahead, and we encourage everyone to stay engaged. Let's get started.
Thank you very much for that very warm introduction. You're excited, Brian, but I'm equally excited, probably even more excited to be hosting today's panel discussion. What an honor it is to have our guests here this afternoon. So good day as well to everyone that's watching us from all over the world. It's a pleasure to have you here today. Maybe before we get started with our discussion, I just wanted to shoot up some key points which I gathered from our earlier speakers. So if you allow me to just spend a few minutes to capture some important points which really are my personal takeaways. In a highly competitive landscape where there's this constant war for talent, attraction and talent retention are often key areas of focus by a lot of our chief people, officers, and business owners, and business leaders in general. The need to have workplaces that are safe and inclusive are really very important, especially from the lens of perhaps somebody looking for their next employment opportunity or looking for their next career goal. Very important to have such workplaces which are inclusive and safe. As we know, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging are also not just words that we might see on texts or social media or words that perhaps you would see plastered or posted on the wall or a bulletin board. So these come to life in many forms in different organizations, and particularly for Dive-In, where we want to really promote awareness around neurodivergent talent and around inclusion in general. D&I and belonging are really those words that come to light, particularly in areas, again, where we talk about workplaces which are safe and inclusive. But it begs the question of how then do we have such kinds of safe and inclusive workplaces? So earlier we heard Merlee share a lot of myths about managing neurodivergent talent. I know there's been a lot of published material as well online in terms of the numbers around adults with neurodivergence. And this would be the same examples that Merlee shared earlier in terms of autism, ADHD, dyslexia. But again, today there's so much written as well in terms of employers who recognize such diversity in talent and thinking. And then looking at it from the other standpoint, where such diverse talent brings a lot of innovation, a lot of creative thinking, exceptional skills that the tight labor market could really benefit from. So let's dive in, if you will, and explore. Before we talk further about that, I want to talk first about stigma, stereotypes, and stigma. And maybe let's kick off our panel discussion and conversation around stigma and stereotypes.
So one is that the misconception around neurodivergent talent having no professional competence, and that's not true. As we've heard from Merlee earlier, a lot of our neurodivergent talent possess unique strengths and abilities. Some of them would have high attention to detail, creativity, problem solving, different approach in terms of problem solving, and all of these are actually important in the workplace. The other thing that I would like to address also in terms of misconception is for the perspective of the employers. A lot of employers would think that it's costly and it's complex to provide accommodations for neurodivergent talent. Well, in fact, in reality, a lot of accommodation are actually simple and low cost, such as flexible work hours or noise canceling headphones to reduce sensory stimuli for people who has that need. And it's a matter of educating really our HR, our managers, our leaders around that these accommodation exist.
I think the biggest one was they look at us as if we're babies. Like we need a lot of hand holding. So that's one. I've experienced that, although not in a work setting, but in others. But when we talk about the total stigma and all, there are cases because you know how we sensationalize a lot of reports. I think it was around the time wherein there was some violence in some parts of the world, and then they stated that the individual has a certain diagnosis, And then now that that stigma, oh my God, oh, these people with that diagnosis are violent. These people with that diagnosis has this tendency to be above the rules of some sort, and that gets carried on to everyone in that regard. And these are stigmas, these are stereotypes that, even though in the Philippines you don't really get that much reports such as that, right? But because it's so sensationalized, because it's such an umbrella, that we get affected. And every time, because I self-declare, I do remember when I'm filling up forms, like, do you have any health declaration? To me, ADHD, to me, sensory processing disorders, these are just medical conditions that I do have. And then suddenly, when I give that form, they will look at me and like, yeah, all right. So I know those stigmas are, to us, it's a condition. It's a diagnosis that was given to us by a doctor. But to other people, I'm not saying everyone, right? But to other people, there's already this image that forms with that label. Oh, this person has ADHD. He's gonna be violent. Oh, he's gonna be a rule breaker. But that's not the truth.
So it's that understanding the diagnosis, and at the same time, perhaps functional diagnosis. Yeah. Maybe even need falling, I would imagine.
To a certain extent, there are movements, like it's not
Word already. I'm word as well, but we already know, like, there are movements against it, but some places still use that. And like the diagnosis, we use the diagnosis, it's a medical term, right? ADHD, autism. But then we use this other adjectives that shouldn't be used even in a professional setup.
Or even persons with disabilities for that matter, experience four different types of barriers, especially when they enter the workplace. One would be physical, second would be communication, third would be institutional barrier policies. I mean, you don't have policies that would say that they should be accepted or even considered for a job. But ultimately, it all boils down to attitudinal barriers. Because sometimes, even if the policies are in place, but if you have an HR person in recruitment, who, just like what you're saying a while ago, she or he gets your application, and there you indicate that you have this certain type of condition, definitely, definitely you wouldn't be accepted anymore. How do I know that? Why? Because when I started in this advocacy about 11 years ago, I spoke in front of about more than more than 500 HR managers, and I asked them simple questions: whether they would hire, they're open to hiring persons with disabilities, what type of disabilities do they prefer, and the least preferred are those with autism and Down. And I asked them why, and you know what their answer was? Because they cannot amount to anything. They cannot produce. They'll just be a nuisance in the workplace. They might bite. They might create commotion, and it would be a great cost to the company. Imagine these are HR managers, HR professionals at that. So definitely there should be uh, a campaign for awareness and all of these moves that we are doing right now. Well, as I've said a while ago, these organizations, the same organizations that same companies I talked to, at the end of the day, would want to do something good. It's just that they don't know how. So basically, it's a lack of knowledge, lack of education. So our NGO provides that knowledge, provides that education, that they will be able to build that confidence that, hey, we can make this work. Hey, we can learn from one another. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Other companies have gone ahead of us, and that's what we provide. We provide the network wherein they are able to relate with one another. We help one another share best practices, and at the same time, journey together. Because at the end of the day, it's not about a matter of who has done it first, but basically, how can we help one another succeed in this journey? Not just the persons with disabilities or neurodivergent people with their own companies, but each company helping one another, even if they are actually rivals. I mean, this is good. You're all insurance companies here. I mean, professionally, you're all rivals, but we are all helping one another here. This is a very good thing that we're doing here.
It's really a matter of broadening your accessibility and also maintaining fairness. So one good example is um, think about redesigning your application process for flexibility. Like, are your job descriptions clear? Because people who are neurodivergent talent, they would need to know explicitly what's expected of the role. And that in turn benefits as well, right? The neurotypical,
Right.
giving that sense of clarity.
Yeah.
So that's one example. The other example is during the interview process, we can probably explore other ways to do the interview, right? It could be other than face to face. It could also be maybe submitting, or having the candidate do a project based assessment. That way, we're able to cater to different communication styles, and that is also important for neurotypical. And really, probably the third thing I'd like to emphasize is really think about the qualifications. When you think about the core competencies of the role, for example, is communication skill really necessary for that specific role? Maybe not, right? And focus your emphasis on the strengths and on what's really the essential skill required for that role. So that way you are accommodating, providing opportunity to neurodivergent. At the same time, other groups are not alienated.
Yeah.
So in summary, it's really designing the hiring practices with a mindset of flexibility, fairness, and transparency.
Fantastic. I think, Ed, I hear that a lot of times perhaps people take job descriptions for granted, right? Job descriptions are there. If I may borrow your mic, because I got the signal that this microphone isn't working. So I hear that a lot of organizations might, just take job descriptions as, oh, it's there. We've been using it for years. It's the same. And perhaps it's a task that's often overlooked. But I hear you, the importance of that clarity, transparency, flexibility to address the perhaps needs that the neurodivergent talent might have in being able to showcase the talent or fitness for the job. No, thank you. What a fantastic recommendation. Frankie, I want to go back to you. Because earlier I heard you say that you self-declare, in an application form or whatever form you have to fill out. For instance, you self-declare the diagnosis.
Yes.
We're done talking about stereotypes, but I want to approach it from a standpoint of opportunity. So if, for example, we have other leaders, hiring managers, I know there are some here in the audience who are leaders and perhaps hiring managers. The tips and recommendations Ed shared was really very helpful. From your vantage point, what advice do you have for leaders who work with neurodivergent talent? From a hiring perspective or even from a day-to-day talent management perspective?
Oh, from the hiring perspective, Ed mentioned a lot of things already. Like, sometimes the applicant would not tick all the checkbox, but in entirety, like in terms of competency, in terms of their ability to do that job, they're able to do that. So I guess one of the things that is often overlooked as well is the trial period, right? More often than not, what we really want is that opportunity that you give us the chance to like showcase you what we can, and that just that, because a lot of times, and of course I'm not saying for me, but if you go to social media, if you go to forums about people with disability, neurodivergent individuals, that's one of their top concerns. Like they're not even like they get invited to interviews or job interviews, but they don't get to sit on the table. They're not even given a chance. So I think that's one of the first things that you can consider. Give them a chance. I mean, that's at what, 3-month, 4-month period. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. They know it doesn't work. It's like, okay, you didn't hire me because I didn't fit the expectations. But at least I know and instead of saying no at the very start. So yeah, one, like, the check boxes. Oh, I don't think there's been a candidate who's ticked all the check boxes. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, opportunities to show how we can work, that we can work, that's always the first, like, that's a foot inside the door for us.
Yeah.
And for working, it's not a cookie cutter. Some neurodivergent talents, and I do remember this because I had this joke with my mom, like, so one time my mom asked me to buy groceries, and she told me, okay, buy like a carton of eggs and milk, like I think that was 3 cans of milk. If there's bread, get 4. So when I got home, I brought home the carton of eggs and 4 milks. And my mom was like, why did you bring 4 milks? Because, Mama, there was bread. You told me if there's bread, get four breads. No, I thought it was 4 milks.
Yeah.
So that's at my home, and that's how I was able to process that command. It wasn't, maybe to some people it would have been clear, but I'm sorry, it wasn't that clear for me. And this could happen in workplaces as well.
Right.
So if you can be as specific as you can, that would also benefit everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
But communication, I think that is something that everyone should be like focusing on, because if you have clear communications, everything else follows.
Yeah.
It's a domino effect.
Wish it was that simple, right?
I know.
But it also emphasizes the importance of, the transparency, the flexibility that Ed mentioned earlier as well. The communication, very important. Grant, if we can go back to you and your comment earlier, because I heard you say that, your NGO helps a lot of organizations, and especially in the insurance industry, right? You're right. To a certain extent, we compete with each other. But in cases where we want to promote diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, we want to work together. So from your perspective, as you work with organizations who are setting up or who are, executing on their D&IB programs, what are the areas that you find most overlooked by employers or organizations when it comes to managing neurodivergent talent?
Well, for one, it's very important for neurodivergent talents to be able to speak out for themselves. We're talking about a whole group of people who are in themselves are diverse, very, very diverse. As Merlee showed in the framework a while ago, there are different types of neurodiversity, and they all have their own different skills, even their own limitations. So it would be good if companies would be giving them the space to be able to speak out and advocate for themselves, and probably consult with them on how we are going to make it better for everyone else. Because we're talking about not just hiring them, but keeping them in and maximizing their potential. Because if we are able to maximize them, then definitely it would be best for the company. And frankly, we're talking about, in our organization we call it task analysis. We analyze the tasks and we make it granular. The more granular it is, the better it is, not just for the neurodiverse person, but for the whole organization, because definitely you can break down the task to so many people and get everyone else involved. And then they can all pitch in and say, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. Then there'll be synergy with with the neurodiverse talent and even the neurotypical people. So it's just a matter of coming together, having that space for everyone to speak out, and them determining them by themselves what could be done if we could do this together.
Excellent. And it's not the shortcut. So we heard the cookie cutter approach, and the shortcut doesn't work, right? Identifying opportunities, and maybe it's also an opportunity for others to collaborate and help, right? Ed, let's go back to you, because you've worked in the D&I space for quite a long time. with different organizations, right? So you have a different lens depending on perhaps what organization you were in. I would imagine culture plays a really big component in all these. What do you believe are key components when it comes to fostering a culture of acceptance? You know, a while ago we spoke about stereotypes and myths, and the stigma, and shifting gears towards integrating it into the overall culture of the organization. So, what do you believe are key components in fostering a more inclusive, a culture of more acceptance?
Yeah, I would say the foundation would really be education and awareness. And to Grant's point earlier around attitudinal barriers, that's one way to effectively manage that. And it would be ideal to start it from the top, right? Because any strategy that's not supported at the top level will not really succeed, right? So to me, it's a matter of education, creating that awareness at an organizational level, at the same time, looking at the entire employee life cycle from hiring to offboarding, and embedding in each of those touch points, embedding accessibility, accommodation, and the right attitude. And when I say right attitude, it's how do we become confident in terms of dealing with neurodivergent talent within our company. And one way that we do that in my current company is we have an ERG, an employee resource group called True Ability KIN or Kindrel Inclusion Network, where we empower the group to initiate programs to support a sense of belonging and help amplify voices of our neurodivergent talent. At the same time, we leverage them, to get feedback around our existing policies and practices. Because as Grant mentioned earlier, right, we have to involve them. As they say, nothing for us without us, right? So we have to involve them because individualized for us without us. Because the approach should not be a cookie cutter, as what Frankie mentioned, but it should be a personalized, highly individualized, because even if you have that full spectrum, not everyone would have the same needs, and not everyone are the same. Like a person with autism, there will be with autism who are nonverbal and are very sensitive to external stimuli, while there are also others who are highly verbal and not really super sensitive to sensory stimuli. So the approach should also be individualized.
Okay, excellent. And that really dovetails into what Frankie said earlier about, it's not a cookie cutter approach. It has to be more customized, individualistic, and all that, right? More catering to the individual, recognizing the individual as a whole unique person, and then adjusting accordingly. Frankie, I'm curious. Can you share, if you may, can you share an experience where you felt your neurodivergence was actually an asset to the organization or to your career, or perhaps any interaction you might have had?
Um, I guess one thing that really stuck to me was that my arrangement with work is we have office hours. Like if somebody sets a meeting with you during those hours, you have to attend that meeting. But you, I don't really have to work during those working hours. So what I do is I ask like my boss, when do you need this? Is this something you need today? I need it by EOD. Okay, by EOD is that 11:59:59 or 6 p.m. Right? Yeah, you just like even like after work hours. It's like, okay, that's good because I kind of have to like recharge, right? But if you give me a deadline and you're very explicit with that deadline, even if you tell me the deadline is in 30 minutes, I'll find a way to do that. I'm very strict with myself in terms of that. Okay, I have to submit it by this day, and I'll even if it takes me like 4 hours to like be in the mood to do it, I'll be able to do that. So I think that that's something that Oh wow, not a lot of people can do that, right? Another thing is that um I I do I tend to jump. Like I can have several projects at the same time, but I won't get lost. I know where we are in a specific project. I know what needs to be done next in that specific project. And that also includes stuff outside of the work. Like I wouldn't mix them up. I wouldn't be put in a position wherein, oh no, I forgot to follow this one up. No, because I have a chaotic system, chaotic, but it works. So it works for me.
Yeah.
So, but I guess I wouldn't call it a superpower. A lot of people would say, "Oh, that's such a nice superpower." It's not. It's the way my brain works. It's the way how I process information. Yeah. Because if we call it a superpower, it's such an ableist move. I don't know. That's just me though. But to me, it's how I work. It's how I process information, and you process information differently, you know. So, but in that case, it worked for me. A lot of people, every time I tell them that, oh, when you need this, I have 30 minutes to do something, but I'll be able to do that, and they're like, oh wow, oh wow. No, it's not. But so I guess that's something that worked for me. That's not really neurotypical.
Yeah, yeah. Good, good. Or how to make it work to your advantage as
Yeah.
successful, right? Okay. As we kind of wind down our panel discussion for today, first of all, I'd like to thank all of you for the wonderful sharing. But I'm not going to let you go too soon. Before we close, I want to hear from each of you. What advice can you give our audience today? No, what parting words of wisdom do each of you have for them to take away in managing neurodiverse talent or in hiring neurodiverse talent? Maybe we'll start with you, Frankie, and then Ed and Grant.
Um, I guess always treat things with curiosity. If you if you start with a vision already in mind, then that defeats everything. So if you approach everything with curiosity, you ask questions, and then you learn to ask the right questions, and then suddenly you just find yourself that it's already, it's already part of your system. Asking questions, making the proper accommodations, because you're not a mind reader. No one's a mind reader. No, you wouldn't know what other people would need if you don't ask questions. And the only way for you to ask questions is if you're curious. So treat everything with curiosity, have an open mind, and yeah, ask questions. They don't have to be right in the first try, but it's always a good start.
Yeah, well, I would say that neurodiversity it isn't just a trend because it's being talked a lot by a lot of organizations now. It isn't just a trend. It is not just a policy. It is not just a tick of the box, but it's an opportunity for us and for the organizations, for the whole ecosystem to reimagine how we innovate, how we collaborate, and how we succeed together as a as a society and as workplaces. And and also I'd like everyone to remember that true inclusion is really embracing the full spectrum of the human potential, and that true inclusion is critical to long-term business success.
Okay, for those who want to hire or thinking of hiring neurodiverse talents, just get started. Get it on. Stop thinking too much. Don't be afraid to start. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. You can lessen your mistakes because remember there have already been organizations who have done this ahead of you. Just like what Frankie said, ask. Ask them, collaborate, and ultimately remember this. The graver mistake is that when you do not do it at all. So it's better to commit a mistake and then learn as you go along than not doing it at all. Let's stop tokenism. Let's stop talking about it. Let's just do it.
I love it. What a fantastic set of recommendations. I think there's a lot for the audience to take away from each of you and very different perspectives. What wonderful nuggets of wisdom that you guys shared today. So thank you very much. The recent momentum, as Ed said, no, there's a lot of awareness. The recent momentum really has gained so much traction around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And it is very essential for growth, especially in a highly competitive marketplace. No, not just essential for growth, but also extremely important for long-term business sustainability, as you had mentioned. But the attention is way overdue, right? And in terms of a talent strategy, having inclusive strategies and solutions can really enhance the culture of the organization, can enhance mental health and well-being, access to care, quality of care, and the overall employee experience for that matter, right? Companies who have such programs and support are seen to also be highly collaborative, have strong innovation, high levels of productivity, and also result to higher engagement and retention and overall strong employer branding. Creating safe and inclusive spaces for underrepresented groups, including neurodivergent individuals, is also the right thing to do. Again, it's the duty of care that we give to our employees, recognizing each individual's identity and uniqueness, no, and making them thrive. So I have 3 bits of call to action for our audience today, here and online. The first is integrating it in the organization culture. And how do you integrate that into the organizational culture? As you mentioned, be curious, ask questions, keep an open mind, promote awareness through training, and just do it, right? Just hire, get the neurodivergent talent. Not to say experiment on them, but just give it a try, because then, as we mentioned earlier, there are a lot of benefits that it can bring to the organization. So the call to action would essentially be broken down into one: start, right? Start with a workplace, perhaps evaluation. Where are you today in terms of your D&I goals? And look at it from a lens of policies, benefits, demographics. Also look at possible diversity in terms of benefits that can be offered to neurodivergent talent. Second would be around breaking the stigma by increasing awareness, the training that we talked about earlier, making sure that people understand what does neurodiversity mean, ensure that maybe there are even employee resource groups, as you had mentioned earlier, no, to foster that sense of community and belonging and inclusiveness. And then third, is to strengthen the duty of care by showing support for the different work styles and the different work preference individuals may have, making it easy as well to access support, no? Any kind of support that they need. They know that they would have such support if that duty of care is present in the organization. So again, in such a scenario, everyone is celebrated, everyone is respected regardless of their neurodiverse talents. And again, everyone has an opportunity to thrive. So Frankie, Ed, and Grant, thank you very much for a very wonderful and enriching panel discussion. It was such a privilege for me to host this discussion today on behalf of Aon.